than 4,000 migrants have crossed the Channel to the UK so far this year, with hundreds arriving in the last few days. Now, last week we saw live on air on Good Morning Britain, didn't we? We watched a group of men attempting that treacherous journey live on the programme. Jonathan Swain was there in the Channel, and it was challenging because the French side of things meant that they were there to check they didn't get into trouble physically. And the British then had to escort them in. Yeah. That's how the maritime rules work. Should we send in the Royal Navy to force migrant boats back, as Home Secretary Priti Patel has indicated might be a solution? Or is diplomacy with France the answer? Well, joining us now is Pierre-Henri Dumont, a member of the French National Assembly representing Calais, former Director General of the UK Border Force Tony Smith, from Portsmouth, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, former Director General at the Ministry of Defence, who spent 36 years in the Royal Navy. And in East London, Syrian refugee Hassan Akkad, who fled his home country in 2015, who knows about those risks. Well, look, I'm going to come to you first of all, Pierre-Henri Dumont. When we cover these stories, we have many times before, but we watched live on Good Morning Britain last week, people actually doing that journey. There was an extraordinary reaction from viewers, some concerned for the safety of those on the boat, but a lot bewildered by seeing the French rescue boats just watch to see if they got into trouble, so protect their safety, but doing nothing to stop it, and then watch as, on the English side, the Coast Guard, the rescue boats had to go out and bring them in. And for many people, that was, well, there's the problem. The French are doing nothing, and we're there rescuing those people, so it's just encouraging more people to come. Is that fair, do you think, to perceive it as the French doing nothing?
No, it's totally unfair. As an example, we stopped this year 800 migrants at sea, and we must add to these 800 migrants all those who were stopped before being at sea. We are dismantling dozens and dozens of smuggling activities in France with the help of European police, British police. So we are doing whatever we can, but you need to understand that we've got almost 300 kilometers of coast to monitor between France and the UK, and we cannot have a police officer every 1 or 2 kilometers to check.
To be clear, this wasn't a case of a long stretch of coast. The boats, the authorities were right there. But as I understand it, the law is that they can't stop it. Is that the problem? Or they just have to watch until they go into English waters?
No.
Why can't they stop it then?
We are stopping the migrants when they ask for help, basically, you know. So we
not going to
cannot
ask for help, though, are they? What they're going to do is want to get to Britain. That's what people are saying.
Yes.
So why can't you just pick them up?
We are picking them up. We are picking them up, but we are aiming at one point here is saving lives. What we should focus on is how we are going to do with France and Great Britain to not to have the Channel being a new Mediterranean Sea, and how could we do to be sure we're gonna not see dead bodies lying on both sides of our sea coasts. So that's our main goal. So basically, we are doing whatever we can to prevent all these boats to go at sea. And when they are at sea, we are helping the migrants to get back to the boat and back to Calais or to Gravelines or to Dunkirk. But we cannot stop all the boats because that would mean stopping like 20, 30 boats sometimes every day, and we don't have all the vessels to do that. And basically, you know, you have to choose sometimes between two boats when you've got one vessel of the French police, of the French coastguards, and two small boats, one as the one we have on the screen right now, that is safer than kayak, than some riskier boats. We need to save lives, so it means we need to save the ones who have a bigger chance to die crossing the Channel. That's a kind of very tricky choice, but our choice for the French authorities is to save lives, basically.
OK, I mean, clearly it's, very difficult choices to make. Tony Smith, you're the retired as Director General of the UK Border Force back in 2013. You were there for 40 years. I mean, isn't part of the problem here we're seeing an increase of these people risking their lives on these dinghy boats across the Channel because the legal route has been closed? Now, everyone will probably agree it probably should have been closed back in March because of the high peak of the pandemic. But there is an argument now the pandemic has eased off, and now we're seeing people are still taking these huge risks, that actually we should open up that legal route, at least maybe in September. And if people knew that there was going to be a legal route possible, perhaps they wouldn't take these risks. And it's a legal route that the Conservative government and the British government agreed to 5 years ago.
I think there's a danger that we're mixing up resettlement programmes with border security here. We've been playing cat and mouse with smugglers for many, many years now, including with our friends in France across the English Channel. In my day, they were coming in lorries, they were coming across through Calais on the ferries and the trains. We've concluded a number of agreements with France to enable to stop those flows. And I think what we need now is to close this loophole where people, once they get on the high seas, all of the international conventions are aimed at people that want to be rescued. I think what your report is showing is they don't want to be rescued by the French vessels, because that means they would be taken back to France. So it's really difficult. We don't want people drowning. We need a joint patrol, I think, in the English Channel, and a new agreement when we leave the EU and the Dublin Convention, which means that they will be returned instantly and safely to France, where they can be processed. At the moment, what we're seeing is a fueling of the supply chains. The smugglers see they're getting the upper hand. We haven't been able to deal with it, and I'm afraid the numbers will continue to increase.
So is the Navy the solution?
The Navy is certainly going to help us. We've only got a small fleet of cutters here, and they weren't designed for major interdictions of the high seas. We look at Australia and the US with a separate border or maritime command or border patrol. We don't have that. So I think we do need to look at a broader range of assets to see what we've got. But also, at the same time, we need to come to this new conclusion that actually, we agree with France. We can't have this carry on. We don't want dead bodies washed ashore on either side. We need a joint interdiction strategy and an instant return strategy to put the smugglers out of business.
I suppose what the French might say, though, and we can ask Pierre-Henri Dumont when we've given the others a chance to speak as well, he might say is, why should the pressure all be on France to turn back? If they are processing people who are looking to stay in France, successfully, if they're trying to catch them as they move through France, if they're doing a lot of work, why should the pressure be on France to turn them back when we should also be doing more ourselves?
But Kate, we need legal routes for migration into the EU. I mean, there's about 20 million people displaced around the world, according to UNHCR. The West, including the whole of the EU, Australia, Canada, we're only taking 100,000 of those people. So there's a huge pressure. The supply of refugees, and the number that the countries are prepared to take is wrong. There's a huge imbalance. We talk about 5,000 a year. It's a drop in the bucket. If we're going to resettle people from places like Syria, let's have a proper programme to do it in the Western world, but not by this route, Kate. It's hugely dangerous. People are going to die. People are going to drown. And this is international organised crime, and we're simply fueling that at the moment.
Well, look, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, former Director General at the Ministry of Defence, you spent a long time, 36 years in the Royal Navy. Is your former, employers, as it were, are they the answer? Would you like to see the Royal Navy getting involved?
Well, yes, I would. I think that, as Tony said, they're part of the answer. We've got to ask our French colleagues to help. We've got 300 kilometres of coastline on both sides. We've got criminal activity on both sides of the Channel. We've got criminal activity in the Channel itself. And right now, we've got a very unsafe and insecure maritime border. And if the government asks for the aid of the Royal Navy in securing that border, then it's all well and good. I think we've got to remember.
But what would you do, though, practically? I mean, if the law is the case that you can only do it when people want to be rescued and they're not going to ask to be rescued because they want to carry on and try and get here, what are we going to do? Are we going to be in an extreme situation when you're shooting people out the water? Do you know what I mean? It's all very well saying, let's get the Royal Navy involved, but what does that actually mean?
I don't think anybody's talking about shooting people in the water.
No, of course not. But, what are you going to do if you can't turn them back?
Well, fine, OK. It depends what the government policy is. The Navy will do what is required to provide extra coverage, extra intercept capabilities. My own view is that under international law, you have to take people to a safe place. You don't necessarily have to take them to shore. We've got lots of unemployed cruise liners stooging around the south coast at the moment. My view is we should take them to a cruise liner. We should give them medical attention, quarantine them, process them on board, and they can either come to the UK or they need to be returned to France, as we've said. I think the time is over now for the traditional ways. They don't work, as Tony said, and we've got to explore legal and practical ways in which we can deal with this problem, because it's only going to get worse.
Very interesting idea, actually. I've never heard that suggested before.
Now let's speak to Hassan Akkad. If you haven't come across Hassan Akkad before, let me just give you a bit of an introduction. It's important that we know Hassan's background. Hassan himself, a Syrian refugee and a filmmaker. He arrived in the UK May 2015 after 87 days of travelling to get here. I think he tried to cross the channel, I think, I've seen the documentary myself, about 50 times, almost drowned. Finally made it here. He's an English teacher. He was an English teacher in Damascus. He was tortured there. He's come here. He's working here. And you may have seen him recently during the coronavirus pandemic working in some of the hospitals on the minimum wage. And Hassan joins us now. Hassan, as Chris Parry was mentioning there, in the end, we need to look at the practical elements. And I suppose the practical elements are, well, what's the motives? And why are so many refugees or migrants, whatever we want to choose to call them, why are they keen to come to Britain specifically when they've travelled through Europe, France, other European countries, but they go beyond that and they feel that Britain is the place they want to be? Why is that?
Good morning. So not many people come to Britain. The tiny majority of people who travel to Europe decide to come to Britain. And the reasons vary. It's either strong family links, community, academia, people, knowing people that you could rely on and help you kickstart your life after you fled a war-torn country. I think so. The conversation we're having is very important. I agree with some of your guests that it's not a great look to send the army or the navy to stop vulnerable people from trying to cross the channel. I think the solution will be in trying to come up with legal and safe routes into Britain. Now, resettlement has been frozen since March. But resettlement only works for people who are trying to come in from Syria or from Iraq or from Afghanistan. But it doesn't happen from people who are in Calais. I think instead of spending tens of millions of pounds from taxpayers on building walls around the ports in Calais, I think if we spend this money on actually processing these people in Calais and see if they have and processing their claims, and then if we accept their asylum claims, that take them here, 20 or 30 pounds on a ferry to Calais, that will be cheaper and it would save lives.
Hassan, you and I have spoken before. You're an extraordinary person, and you're someone that any country would and should be glad that you chose them to make your home. You've done extraordinary things since you've been here. You've, as we saw, helped out with the COVID crisis. The problem is, I think, for a lot of people, is that there's almost a sort of an emptying of sympathy. People feel panic-stricken by COVID. Some people didn't want so much immigration anyway. And I know we're talking about, in your case, asylum seeking, which is slightly different, but everything gets lumped into the same category, doesn't it? And people feel like, hang on, we've got enough problems. We've got a pandemic. We've got businesses going bankrupt. We've got industry in trouble. We've got everything that people are worried about. We just don't want any more people to come. We don't want it now. And that is the urge, and that is a reaction we've already had this morning.
I know. I see this.
You see what I mean?
I see this on social media the whole time, also on mainstream media sometimes. But it's not refugees and asylum seekers and migrants who are bankrupting Britain. It's offshore funds and tax evasion that is bankrupting Britain. Austerity, the decades of austerity is bankrupting Britain. It's not us. I mean, I hope one day migrants and refugees decide to take a day off in Britain, and I want to see what becomes of this country. Also, for the past, 3 or 4 weeks now, some people like Nigel Farage on Twitter calling this an invasion. It's definitely not an invasion. Invasion is an invasion of, Well, I mean, it's ironic, actually, because Britain did invade Iraq and Afghanistan. But if Iraqis and Afghans now want to come in and seek asylum in Britain, it's not our problem, and we call it an invasion. Yeah. British-made bombs are being dropped on Yemeni people in Yemen, and if Yemeni people decide to flee and seek asylum in Britain, it's not our problem. I think this problem is. I think the whole refugees and migrants issue is being exaggerated. It's being being used as a distraction. Because 1% of the refugee population is in Britain. Chad has more refugees than Britain. Lebanon, Sudan, Bangladesh has more refugees than Britain. And I don't see any other country that complains about refugees and migrants as Britain does. Yeah. We should solve this problem. I'm sorry, I'm going to conclude with this. We should solve this issue. We don't want to see dead bodies on the channel, but we should take Germany as a role model. Not America, where Trump is locking up children on the southern borders. We should come up with a human solution, not send the military, the Navy to stump these borders. It's not a great look.
Hassan, just put this into context as well. I mean, the latest asylum application figures from 2019, UK 44,000, France 128,000, Germany 167,000. Even Greece had more applications of 77,000. But look, can I just ask you one very simple question? And we talk about what people say on social media and maybe even some on mainstream media, and there is an allegation that's made towards migrants or refugees. And is it a myth, or is there any truth and substance in the fact that people are worried that migrants and refugees come here and they're just coming here to claim benefits? And there's a thought that you can come to Britain because there's free money to be had.
We had a harvest crisis during the pandemic, so we had to fly in Romanians so they can pick up our crops. No, it's not. People are not coming for the benefits. £5 a day for asylum seekers. What's that going to buy you? I think this is a myth. Honestly, I can name you 100 people I know who came from Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq and didn't take a penny from the welfare system, and they're all paying their taxes and actually employing Brits in their businesses. So no, it's a myth. And I want to refer to the first point that we discussed about having traveled through so many safe countries. Yes, you are perfectly within your rights to travel through safe countries and then claim asylum in Britain. Hundreds of thousands of Brits live in Spain and south of France and Dubai and Vietnam. Why are they allowed to live there? And people from Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and Sudan are allowed to come and live here. It's this is a myth. Yeah.
All right, Hassan, we really appreciate your time. Yours is an incredibly inspiring personal story. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Britain this morning, Hassan Akkad. Also, thanks to Tony Smith, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, and Pierre-Henri Dumont, MP in Calais.